For today's lesson, we're going to expand upon what we've learned from drawing the 4x4. When we learned to draw the 4x4, we were dealing with diagonal information. We learned how to use our string vertically and horizontally to ask questions and accurately draw diagonal information. For those of you who are new to this process, it might seem like a lot of work just to draw diagonal lines. So I thought I would explain why we take these steps to draw diagonals. When we draw still lifes, we're mostly going to be dealing with vertical, horizontal, and diagonal information. The way we draw is based upon the way we see. Our eyes very easily see vertical information. We can easily compare the scale of verticals and estimate, for example, how many of the smaller buildings it would take to reach to the top of the taller ones. Our eyes see horizontal information fairly accurately as well, although we do have a tendency to exaggerate the width of things as we draw. Perhaps this is from our horizontally placed eyes, made for scanning the horizon for oncoming threats, resources, or landmarks. This is why a lot of novice drawings feel flat or stretched out. Diagonals, on the other hand, are very difficult for our eyes to gauge. Why is this? Well, the human eyeball has an easier time moving up and down or left to right within the socket. Our eyes cannot move diagonally in the socket smoothly enough to track diagonals accurately. You could try it right now. Try to make a smooth diagonal line with your eye in space. It's a little awkward. You can feel your eyeball skip every so often, or make a little staircase. As we prepare to draw still lives, we should take note of how verticals, horizontals, and diagonals behave in 3 dimensions. Look at this cube, for instance. Do you notice anything strange? What if I were to tell you that this cube is impossible? This cube, or really just an illustration of one, is made up of verticals, horizontals, and some diagonals. A real cube is only made up of verticals and diagonals, unless only one side is visible. Then it's made up of verticals, horizontals, and diagonals. So if you can see more than one side to a box, there shouldn't be any perfect horizontal lines. Keep this in mind as you draw. For this assignment, you will need the same flat square that you used for the 4x4 assignment. And you'll need a flat rectangle that is smaller than the square. I'm using an 8.5 by 8.5 square and a 3 by 4.5 rectangle that I've cut out of a piece of paper. I've also colored in my rectangle so that I can see it more easily in contrast to the square. So I already have my 4x4 drawn, and now I just need to carefully plot the location of my rectangle on top of my 4x4. My dog is right next to me and he's squeaking, so if you hear something, it's a dog. Okay. Just with my eyeballs, trusting myself, I'm going to plot where I think, thanks for the ear flops, where my corners of my piece of paper are. I'm kind of looking at the triangles that are being created by the rectangle on top of the square. I'm asking, how far down this line is the highest point of my rectangle? It's not halfway through, it's kind of left of halfway through. Go over here. What about my lowest point? I can drop a straight vertical line right through that point to ask how close it is to this point. So if I drop a straight vertical line through it, it's somewhere on this vertical line. I can put a straight horizontal line through the left or the right point to ask questions about its coordinate, right? It's almost in line with this one, so if I just travel there, this is approximately where that lowest point of my rectangle is. Now I only have to find my rightmost point. Same thing. I'm going to put a straight line through it, ask a question. It is higher than the left point, so it's got to be above that line that I just made. I'm going to put a straight vertical line through it. Here. Now notice that I'm trusting myself a lot more with this than I was with the 4x4 itself. Because you can kind of eyeball it. We need to get good at eyeballing things. Right? It's not all measure, measure, measure. Sometimes it's draw first, measure second. In fact, that's going to be the motto of this class. Draw first, measure second. So I'm going to connect these with my diagonals and see what's going on. My dog is throwing a temper tantrum on the floor. Yes, I know. Yes. So remember that atmospheric perspective. I'm drawing darker on the point that's closest to me and kind of trailing off a little bit. It's very important to get back from your drawing and look at it from afar. So I'm going to get where the camera ends. Alright, it looks a little wonky. I'm looking at these triangles that are being created. Are these the same triangles I'm seeing on the paper? This one looks a little weird, so I'm going to move this point up a little bit. Remember, shift and change is good, and I'm going to be looking for shift and change in your drawing, because our first idea is not our best idea. We were just guessing. Draw first, measure second. We use the incorrect answer to find the right answer, because now you know where not to draw, right? So even just making that with my ruler, it already looks more accurate to me. Atmospheric perspective, trailing off. Make that a little crisp. Okay. Now I've plotted my piece of paper onto my 4x4. After you've plotted your rectangle, get a small box, a tissue box could work really well, and place it so that it's touching the rectangle and the square. Now is the moment of truth. It's time for verticals. This is the easiest part of this process because we see verticals so clearly. I'm looking at the box that I've placed on top of these two pieces of paper. I'm gonna plot where the feet of the box hit the pieces of paper. I can use my string to ask those kinds of questions with straight lines. Okay, so cutting through here, hitting there with that perfect vertical line. I'm going to ask a question about the major edge of the box with that vertical line. Trying to make these very clear so I don't confuse them with any other mark. You can even erase older points just to make sure. Now I need that rightmost vertical line. Dropping a straight line through it. It almost hits this corner, so So it's somewhere through here, up here maybe. The next thing I'm going to do is carry through a vertical line through all of these points. So now I have these 3 marionette strings kind of descending from the sky, and they are going to help me complete this cube. Now all I need to do is figure out the height of each vertical. It's really easy. I know where they all end. I know the feet of the box, but where are the points that are going to be up here? I'm going to use my string, and I can use the measurements that I know of the 4x4 to ask questions about the cube. So make sure you're standing in the right spot, extend your arms out as far as they go, and capture the height of the 4x4 with your string. So here I am again using my viewfinder. I'm capturing the height of the 4x4 with my string, scanning back and forth to make sure it all perfectly fits. And then I'm using the height of the 4x4 and popping up to the cube and comparing the height of the 4x4 to the height of the verticals of the cube. The height of my leftmost vertical of the cube is a little smaller than the height of the 4x4. Yep, just a little bit. So I'm going to take this rectangle, which is the height of the entire 4x4. I'm going to put it on the foot of that vertical, make a little mark. So I know it was a little bit shorter than that, right? Okay, so from here to here is my leftmost vertical. I'm going to do that for every vertical. Height of the 4x4. What about the major edge? A little bit under. I'm going to take that same vertical, put it over here. I'm going to ask some questions. So these seem too similar to one another in height. Just by looking at the cube or by scanning through with a horizontal line, which of these points should be lower than the other? This one should be lower. I'm going to drop it. I've dropped down that point, taken away the old one. Now, what about this last rightmost vertical? Taking the height of the 4x4, comparing it to that. Yep, it's just a smidge shorter than this. So if that's the height of it, I'm going to go down a little bit. Now, there is another vertical here that we can't see. So I'm just going to drop a vertical line with my string through the point, through that corner I can see in the distance. It happens to almost line up with this point, but a little bit further over. I'm going to look at that again. Arms are out all the way. Yep. So I'm going to get my yardstick. Okay. But where is the point? I'm going to scan horizontally. I'm going to put my string through the other points and ask questions. It's only a little bit higher than this point, so if I go over, it's just a little bit higher. Now and only now have I earned my diagonals. So now I need to take a step back from my drawing and assess it. So I'm going to stand where the camera is. Something about that highest point looks a little too high. It's a little wonky. I've lowered and shifted my highest point to the left a little bit, and now it more fully resembles the cube that I'm seeing in the still life. This is the process of drawing your still lives in perspective. If you know how to treat verticals, horizontals, and diagonals in this way, you can draw any rectilinear structure, any architecture, any still life.